Hey, you're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include hyped up, fired up, and fed up.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong! You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Issue number 1! Stick 'em up! There was this crazy thing that happened at a baseball game about a week ago. You may not have heard about it, but as a baseball fan, I have to tell you about it. And you will care even if you don't care about baseball. This woman sitting in the outfield, she stands up and she's like, I've been shot. She'd been shot through her leg at a baseball game. And there was another victim as well who had been grazed in her abdomen. Also by a bullet, by a gun. Not by the bullet that came from the gun. And it took a few days to figure out what was happening, but a reporter in Chicago says that the woman who got grazed was hiding the gun in the rolls of her belly fat. That's right, I gave you a moment there to think about that. She was hiding a gun in the rolls of her belly fat. And the gun accidentally went off and grazed her and shot the woman in front of her. And somebody had video of this, they weren't focused on the people in the outfield, but you can see this woman get up and she's surprised. And then a woman behind her stands up and quickly walks out and up and out of the stadium as you know, the other woman is exasperated because she's been shot at a baseball game. And I have so many questions about this woman's choices. So many questions. First, why is she bringing a gun to a baseball game? Now, to her credit, people have been known to get shot at baseball games in 2023, but she's the one who's shooting them. So really, there's no reason to bring a gun to a baseball game. All the baseball stadiums, they have metal detectors right now. And what's going on with that metal detector in Chicago? Like, wherever you hide it, it shouldn't matter. That metal detector should catch it, right? Second, how does she have enough belly fat to hold a gun? Like, I get it. There's all kinds of different body shapes and you know, people have different metabolisms, and I get it. The food available to Americans is highly processed. I get it. Well, I understand why somebody might be overweight, but at the point that you have enough belly fat to hold a gun, isn't that when you say, hey, maybe I should watch what I eat? Maybe I should walk a little bit more often, right? You're holding a gun. Third thing, why is the safety not on this gun? Like, that's just basic gun safety, right? Like, make sure the safety's on so it can't accidentally fire. Like, your belly fat pulled the trigger on the gun. Like, what's going on with this gun? Then, why are you hiding the gun in your belly fat? Like, beyond like having enough belly fat and having the gun, like, what makes you say, you know what? They're going to find this gun. I know. I'll hold it. I'll put it in this roll of fat. Like, that means you've probably been holding other stuff there too, right? Like, are you suddenly a kangaroo? Like, oh, look, I've got pockets. Like, what is going on? Like, how do you even make that decision? When did you figure out that you could hold something, much less a gun? And then you're like, yes, this is what I'm going to do moving forward. And then the woman got shot in like the 6th inning. That means she was keeping the gun in her belly fat for 6 innings. Like, she didn't just get through security, go into the bathroom, take it out, and put it back in her purse or whatever. Like, wherever she was supposed to keep it, She's like, no, it's cool right there. I'll leave it. It's fine. What the heck? Issue number 2, Cupid doll. There's this thing that happens in carnivals and fairs. You've probably seen it. People are walking around with giant teddy bears, right? Like they knocked over the milk jugs with a softball, and they get this giant teddy bear that they get to carry around all night, and then take it home and have it fill a corner forever. Like nobody knows what to do with those teddy bears when they get home, right? That right there is a reason not to play those games. You have no space for that giant teddy bear. Well, let me give you a tip about what's happening in those carnivals. What's happening with those games is that early in the evening, early in the day, they say to some guy, hey, would you like to play my game? Guarantee you will win. No matter what happens, I'm going to guarantee you win the biggest prize. So that guy wins the giant prize, and he walks around all day with that giant teddy bear. And everybody else sees, whoa, you can win one of those things. I want one of those things. Hey, where are they giving out those giant baby Yodas, right? Like, I want one. That thing's 4 times the size of the real baby Yoda. I want it. And so everybody else goes to the game to try to win the giant Cupid doll, right? And they've done this bait and switch. They've made you think it's possible. And I guess it is possible. You know, they always say, hey, if you have 5 people play or whatever, I guarantee somebody will win. But they do this, you know, to bait everybody else. It's like advertisement, walking around the carnival or the fair all day long. There's this teddy bear that we could all get. Let's go find out where we can get this thing. Well, tech businesses, they do the same thing, right? They offer a new service online and it's free or it's really cheap. They want you to try it out, right? Like I've got this Panera Bread unlimited drink thing. It's free for 3 months. They're hoping that I go to Panera Bread enough that I just get in the habit of going there every day for my coffee, which I don't drink. But if I did, that's the idea. Just get in the habit. We'll give it to you for free for 3 months. You'll get in the habit and then we'll charge you for it. It also works for like these services that they're like, hey, sign up with us. We'll give you a job, like Uber or Postmates or you know, services like that. Like, hey, here's a new way to earn some money on the side. And what they'll do is they'll pay you more than they're actually going to pay in the long end. But for the people who are early, same with multi-level marketing, network marketing. Like the people who are at the, you know, early in, they get the most money because they're at the bottom end of this giant pyramid, right? I know, yours isn't a pyramid anymore. I know. So you sign up for Uber, you're like, wow, I could quit my job by doing this because it's paying me way more than my job. And I get to set my own hours. It's great. And then later on, they do the bait and switch. And they're like, hey, we got to cut costs. We're not actually making money. It was planned all along to not actually pay you as much money as you thought you were going to make early on. So just buyer beware. Next time one of these things rolls out, remember, I told you about the giant Cupid doll. Hey, it's time. What are the rules?
Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
I had this really vivid dream last night. Like, really, really vivid. Like, you know, you wake up from a dream, you're like, whoa, that was an amazing dream. I'm going to totally remember that dream. And then 4 minutes later, like, wait, what happened in that dream? Why didn't I write it down? I was going to tell everybody about this amazing dream. No, this dream stuck with me. Like 15, 20 minutes later, after I woke up, I was still thinking about this dream. I'm like, whoa, that was really, really vivid. Here's what happened in my dream. I was in a developing country. I was inside where it was loud or there was construction going on or something. And have you ever been in like one of those rooms where it's like just all concrete and it's all echoey and it's hard to hear because of so much concrete or tile floors? And this woman was saying something to me, and it was hard to understand her because it was so loud and because she had like a speech impediment or a slur. Like it was she didn't pronounce her words the way you would expect. And in addition to not pronouncing her words the way you would expect, she would kind of turn her face and like kind of cover her mouth when she talked because her teeth were just kind of jacked up. They weren't clean, they weren't straight. She was embarrassed by her teeth, and her teeth were also what was causing her slurred speech. And so she was embarrassed by the way her teeth looked, so she would turn to the side so she wouldn't actually look at you while she was talking. And because it was so loud, I couldn't hear what she was saying, and I couldn't understand what she was saying. And so I wanted to default to reading her lips. Reading her lips would help me know what she's saying, right? But she was intentionally trying to keep me from seeing her mouth. And so I would move to whatever side she was, turning her head to so that I could see her lips. And I think I even said, "Hey, I can't hear you. I need to read your lips." And she couldn't do it. She couldn't look at me while talking because she was just so embarrassed by the way her teeth looked that she would always turn whenever she had anything to say. And eventually she turned all the way around, and I was like trying to get behind her, and her in a dream, her head actually turned all the way around like The Exorcist or something. And I totally get where this dream is coming from. Like, remember I told you about move to the side guy? I talked about this guy who he kept moving to my side, and eventually he was behind me. And it was just weird. Like, why don't you just face me while you talk? And there's this other thing that happened during the COVID pandemic that it was hard to hear people, right? Because everybody was wearing facial masks. And so you couldn't hear them because they weren't talking loudly, and you couldn't see their lips move. And that's where I learned I actually read people's lips quite a bit. And there was also this, there was this time I went to order some tacos, and it was really loud in the restaurant, and the girl working at the counter, she was shy. She didn't feel comfortable talking to people, and she didn't want to speak up. It was hard for her to speak up. And so I kept moving closer so that I could hear her, and she wouldn't talk at the same volume. Even as I moved up, she would reduce her volume the closer I got. And I couldn't hear her, and I couldn't read her lips. It was this irretractable thing. And so this was all a dream. This woman being in a developing country, all a dream. I know in real life, I know what the rule is. I know that I'm supposed to say, "You know what, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit hard of hearing. This is hard for me to hear. I can't hear you. It's a me problem," right? I even if I know that the issue is kind of originating with her in some way, this is a me problem. That's the kind thing to do for everybody. But what about in a dream? What are the rules in a dream? I need you to weigh in on this. Usually for this segment, I've got a firm idea about what the rule is, but this time, I don't know. In a dream, what's the rule? Do I practice the right thing to do? I know I'm dreaming, right? I know I'm in bed. I have this sense that I'm dreaming. If I know I'm dreaming and I can't get over this thing, do I practice the right thing to do? Do I just, do the virtuous thing? Do I do the kind thing? Or do I just take advantage of the dream and grab her by the face and say, "Talk, I know that you have a tooth issue. We all can see it. It's okay. No judgment. Just, I want to hear what you have to say. Speak." What do you think? What's the right thing to do in a dream? Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@thewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, thewrongpodcast.com. And help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show, I Was Wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Listener Eric gets back-to-back references on the podcast. Way to go, Eric. Eric had this to say about episode 93. "This was a good one. Plus, Mitch McConnell loves Mormon leadership too. And I tell you, this happens all the time. I record a podcast. I really want to be the last word on everything. I so badly want to be the last word on everything. I want my tombstone to say, I told you so. Like, it's just in me. And sure enough, I recorded a podcast about Dianne Feinstein not resigning, and then Mitch McConnell goes out there and freezes up and appears to have a stroke in front of everybody and remains in office. And then today, as I'm recording this, there was news that Nancy Pelosi, who is 83 years old, says she's going to run for office again. Now, Nancy Pelosi, to her credit, has stepped away from leadership, and being one of, 400 and something votes as a congressman, not that big of a deal. She's, one congressman's vote is not all that important. But still, she's 83 and she's not going away. And I guess if you're Nancy Pelosi, where else do you have to be? This is it. This is what you want to be doing, right? So yes, Mitch McConnell, also too tired to resign. Issue number 3. Enough already. Donald Trump was indicted for the 4th time this year, maybe this summer, and I was running some calculations. I don't think he's going to be convicted of all these things. The New York case in particular looks like a misdemeanor to me that they're trying to stretch in the weirdest way into a felony. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's politically motivated and they're trying too hard. But the other 3 cases, they have a chance, particularly the stolen confidential documents in Mar-a-Lago. The dude is just dead to rights. They have him. They have the evidence. They have somebody even saying, yes, he told me to destroy these after the FBI asked for them. So I figured out how to do the compounding odds of all 4 of these things. What are the odds of Donald Trump getting convicted on at least one of the 91 counts that are against him? And it's a 98% chance that he will be convicted of a felony. And I don't know if he'll be convicted before the election. I don't know the timeline. And goodness knows, the man has convinced me that deals with the devil are real. Bill Clinton thinks that Donald Trump really gets away with some stuff. But I think there's a 98% chance that he will be convicted. Whether or not he serves any time in prison, I don't know. That's another thing altogether. So I was making this speculation online on Facebook, and a friend of mine said, why are Republican voters still inclined to vote for him? He's got 60% of Republican primary voters who will say that they are going to vote for him in the primary. They're going to make him the Republican nominee. And after the 4th indictment, I saw several people were well, now I'm for sure voting for Donald Trump. I kind of like these other people, but I am for sure in with Donald Trump. And the logic doesn't make sense to me, because you don't undo something that's happening in court by voting for somebody, right? It's not a popularity thing. Oh no, he's not guilty because we really, really like him. That's not how it works. But my friend says, why do people want to vote for him after all that's happened since he left office and the fact that he might be convicted? Why are people still hanging out with him? And I gave him some reasons, and I thought I'd pass these on to you. And there's some stuff I need to talk about here, because it is under my skin, and the podcast is nothing if not an opportunity for me to get the stuff that's under my skin out in a productive way. So here is why I think Republican primary voters are still hanging out with Donald Trump. The first is that no one wants to vote for a lesser evil. So when they're faced with something that feels like voting for the lesser evil, they choose what they think is the lesser evil, but they don't just hang out there. They actually convince themselves that the person they voted for is not just less evil, he's not evil. Or she's not evil. Either way. And they convince themselves that their candidate is actually good. And this is why you don't want to put corrupt people in power, because people just get used to it. They're like, no, it's fine. Like, this is what we can expect. They start overlooking flaws because they've made a choice. And the human brain is nothing but very, very capable at justifying its decisions. It's very, very good at that. And you can see this when they poll people who say they're going to vote for Donald Trump in the primary. 80% of them, they say that he's done nothing wrong. Nothing. And if you don't think he's done anything wrong, and you liked his policies, then of course you're going to vote for the man. Now, this raises a big question about the 20% of people who think he has done something wrong, and they're like still voting for him. Yep, he's done something wrong, but I'm still in. I'm not sure which one confuses me more, the 80% who don't think he's done anything wrong, or the 20% who are still going to vote for him despite knowledge that he's done wrong. Second reason is that every voter wants to protect the incumbent. If their party is in power, they need to protect the incumbent. There may be things that they don't like about that person, but they need to protect whoever is in office. And you don't say anything bad about the person you're planning on voting for. And you don't say anything bad about the guy who's in power. And for many people, they view Donald Trump still in power. Some of them think he's still the president. There's some people who think he's shadow running the government somehow. But you just don't talk bad about your candidate, right? And you don't talk badly about your leader. And this shows up with Joe Biden. Do you hear any Democrats saying, yeah, he really is kind of showing his age? You know, he really is a little too old. You know, I'm really uncomfortable with the Hunter Biden stuff, not so much just because of Hunter Biden, but because Joe Biden seems to enable this, or didn't seem to like, he's not speaking out against it. I'm really uncomfortable with that. You don't hear Democrats saying that kind of thing, right? It's a both sides issue. So Republicans, Trump is the man in power, and we aren't going to say anything bad about him, because if we do, that's only going to enable Joe Biden. Third thing, there's this weird thing in social psychology, and I'm sure I've talked about this before. There's this weird thing in social psychology that when someone is getting conned, they're more upset at the person exposing the con than they are at the con artist. It's a weird thing, and I think it's because it exposes a weakness in their decision making. And nobody wants to be exposed. Nobody wants it to be obvious that they had a flaw in their decision making. And it's my opinion that Donald Trump has conned a number of Republican voters into believing that he is a good, virtuous, conservative politician. And I don't think that's true, but people have made their choice. And they've looked at him, they're like, okay, I'm going to evaluate this guy. What can I ignore? What can't I ignore? And then they make their choice and they just stick with it. Their choice has been made. Fourth thing is that the Republican Party doesn't really have any real policy positions right now. Their main policy position is Democrats are evil and deranged, and we have to keep them out of power. And if we don't, they will come after us. I think that's the main motivating thing for many Republican voters right now. It's not so much that they love the policies of the Republican Party. I don't think many of them could actually name the policies. In the last election, the Republican platform actually didn't say anything. It said, our platform is to support Donald Trump and whatever he wants to do to make America great again. Like, that was it. That's all it said. And many people have accepted the argument that they're only going after Trump to come after you. Once they get rid of Trump, then they're on to you next. And so they have to make sure that Trump doesn't get gotten. Don't get him, because they'll get you. Fifth thing, other Republican politicians, they are scared of their constituents. And they won't say out loud what they believe in private. And their strategy in this is that they hope that people just get burned out at some point. That Trump will flame out. Hopefully one of these convictions will actually take and he'll just get removed. Maybe he'll get tired and he'll walk away, and then we can go back to normal. And what these politicians are doing is they're being followers instead of leaders. And it might be scary to tell your constituents, hey, this isn't working anymore. We need to move on. We need to choose somebody else. Sometimes leadership requires a risk, and they just aren't willing to risk it. Sixth thing, this is true of both sides. Political information is siloed from both sides so that the audience is never upset. This is true on the left, and it's true on the right. If you have a news program that's geared to one or the other, you aren't going to say things that upsets your audience. You need that audience because you're selling advertising to them, and you want more of them, and you know the way to get more of them is to say the things that they already believe. And so people aren't being confronted with inconvenient facts. Both sides true. And it's not just TV, it's like on the internet. Like, social media allows us all to dive deeper and deeper into our own echo chambers. Seventh, people have just lost their taste for virtue. They don't believe that virtue is going to win out in the long run. Eighth, election losses haven't been bad enough to teach anybody a lesson yet. The only way political parties change their mind and do something different is by losing elections over and over and over again. And when they've lost enough elections badly enough, they say, hey, maybe we need to try something different. And the losses over the last 3 election cycles haven't been bad enough to convince anybody to move off of Donald Trump. Ninth, people feel left behind by the quote-unquote normie conservative politicians. And they are fed up with the elites. They don't think the elites on their side have delivered. And Donald Trump is not just a punishment on liberals. He's a punishment on conservative elites. He's a punishment on conservative politicians. Maybe he doesn't get into office and run the country. But you know who else doesn't get in? All the conservatives who have let us down. Like, we're punishing everybody. It's like a scorched earth. He's a device for scorched earth politics on anybody and everybody who has let us down. And it'd be great if he gets in and he causes all those liberal tears. Like, that's the best thing ever, right? That's the hope, is that he produces all those liberal tears. But if we can't get those liberal tears, conservative normie tears, they're not too bad either. The 10th reason why he has such a stronghold in Republican primary voters is that for the last 6 years, anybody who has a problem with Donald Trump has been told that they aren't true Republicans. They're rhinos. They're not real conservatives. And it's amazing how the policies of the Republican Party were abandoned to follow the leader, right? Donald Trump didn't like free trade. Suddenly, Republicans hate free trade. And if you are told enough times that you are not a real Republican, you're not a real conservative, you're not welcome here anymore, well, eventually you're going to leave. And you're going to go register as an independent, or you're going to register non-affiliated, or maybe you'll switch sides entirely. But if you tell enough people that they're not welcome, they will leave. So that reduces the number of Republicans, but it makes the people who stay, makes their voices stronger within that smaller party, right? The number of overall Republicans has decreased. Independents, about 6 years ago, there were about 33% of the voting population was independent. Today, it's up to 50%. People have left one or both parties and made them smaller, and that has diluted the vote. It's done the opposite of dilute the vote. It's made the the Trump voters even stronger within their own party. It's a smaller party, but it's more ideologically pure. So I have some questions that I've been dying to ask some of the people who say that they're even more certain that they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Because it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I've tried to make sense of it. I'm doing my best to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I've tried to explain to you why people are sticking with him. But it doesn't make sense to me, despite all of those reasons. And I just need to know, how is Donald Trump going to win? I absolutely see how he's going to win the primary, but how is he going to win the general election? I know that you hate Joe Biden and you hate the Democrats, but you only get one vote. You don't get more votes because you really, really hate the guy. You only get one vote. And Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes. 7 million people decided that they wanted Joe Biden rather than Donald Trump. Out of those 7 million people, why do you think they're going to change their votes? How many of them are actually going to switch over after Donald Trump already lost a national election? After there was an insurrection in his name on January 6th. After he was found liable of sexual assault by a jury. After a judge said that it is totally reasonable for anybody to describe him as a rapist. After he was indicted in 4 different criminal cases. After he said the Constitution actually needs to be suspended temporarily to put him back in power. How are those people going to change their minds after all those things happened? It doesn't matter if you are convinced none of that's real. You need to deal with those 7 million people and what they think is real. You're really going to convince them that all of those things are fake? Because any single one of them is a disqualifier. They didn't even need those things to disqualify him in the last election. And now, after adding all of those things onto him, you think they're going to be like, yeah, you know what? I changed my mind. It wasn't that bad. And I just have to wonder, is your priority to remove Joe Biden from office, or is it just to give Trump any sort of long shot chance at returning to office? For some people, it's really clear. They want Donald Trump and they don't want anybody else. And they'll take their risk. They'll like, we need Donald Trump and I'm willing to risk it. But most people don't feel that way. Most Republicans are like, no, I really don't want Joe Biden. I really don't want Democrats in office. And if that's your priority, does Donald Trump really give you the best shot at removing him from office? He's already lost 3 elections. How many more elections does he have to lose to convince you that he's not your best bet? And I'll come out and let you know how I'm going to vote right now. This probably won't surprise you. I will not be voting for Donald Trump. I have never voted for Donald Trump. My yes means yes, my no means no, and my never means never. And it's not just a matter of not voting for Donald Trump. If the election is between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I will actively vote against Donald Trump. I will vote for Joe Biden. I am convinced that the only way to break the Republican Party out of the cult of personality that surrounds Donald Trump is to hand them a massive defeat. And my top priority in an election is to make sure that democracy and the Constitution are intact. Now, you might disagree with me. You might have other policies that you think are more important than democracy and the Constitution the country is founded on. Those are actually my top priorities. And I'm willing to sacrifice all my other policy preferences to keep the country intact. So what you need to realize, if you're committed to voting for Donald Trump, is it's not just those 7 million people who voted against him in the last election. There's Republican voters like me who are deciding, hey, enough is enough. I'm actually voting against the dude from now on. If you can't get a Republican voter like me to vote with you in a general election, how are you going to win over the independents? How is that even possible? I think that Donald Trump has like a 20% chance of winning a general election. And if he's convicted of a felony, gosh, it's even lower than that. And I have a follow-up question for all of my Democratic-leaning friends. Is Joe Biden worth the risk? Is he really worth the risk of Donald Trump getting elected again? Like 20% is not a very good chance, but it's still 20%. You would not get in an airplane that had a 20% chance of crashing. Do you want to nominate Joe Biden and risk him falling down some steps 2 weeks before the election? Do you want to risk, just days before the election, him having a stroke on camera like Mitch McConnell? Is that worth the risk? Because let me tell you about general elections. You want to be out of the news when you're running for president. You want the last bad thing said to be about the other guy. You don't want it to be about you. And if the last bad thing that happens going into election day is that Joe Biden significantly shows his age, there's a chance that Donald Trump could win. And is it worth the risk? Remember, earlier I said nobody wants to speak out against the incumbent. And I was talking about Republicans, but gosh, it's about you too. Maybe you should be speaking out against your candidate. 70-something to 80% of the entire country thinks he's too old to be president. That probably includes you. Is it worth the risk? But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know. Let me know why. I had fun. I hope you did too. Bye-bye.